Welcome to my presentation on behalf of a few forgotten women, but all about that place. I'm going to talk about the Cripples Hospital in Hartshill, Stoke-on-Trent. One of my favourite ancestors is my great-grandmother, Mary Yale. She had a daughter, Mary Elizabeth, and I wanted to find her whereabouts in 1922. I found her as a kitchen maid at the Cripples Hospital in Hartshill, Stoke-on-Trent. What was she doing there? Had she answered this advert in the Staffordshire Sentinel on the 11th of October 1920? I hadn't come across the Cripples Hospital before and decided it might be an interesting rabbit hole to explore. Before I go any further, it is important to point out that many things change over time, and how people refer to disability is one of them. The words and language used in the past are often felt to be offensive today. However, in this talk, I will be using some of those words. Starting off down the rabbit hole, what better way to begin than with the evidence in front of me, the 1921 census. There were 4 pages of people registered on census night, the 19th of June 1921. 54 in total. 14 were medical staff, including the matron, Miss Denman, and there were 3 probationers. There were just 5 domestic staff, which included Mary Elizabeth, and there were 32 patients. Miss Denman was aged 41 and came locally from Oakermore. However, the medical staff had been drawn from all over the country, and the outpatient sister was from the Bahamas. Her title indicated that there were not only resident patients, but also those who lived in their own homes, who came in for treatment. Newspaper reports also confirmed this, as during the general strike of 1926, local people had volunteered their cars to transport patients from their homes to the hospital because the trams and buses were on strike. The hospital had the most up-to-date equipment, a radiographer indicating an X-ray machine. There were 4 female masseurs. There were only 5 live-in domestic staff, but probably there were those who came in daily. Inpatient children were fairly evenly split between 17 boys, aged 2 to 15, and 15 girls, aged 2 to 16. All except 1 boy, who was from Glastonbury, were from the surrounding areas. The hospital was opened in 1918. Several events and people fortuitously came together to initiate this new venture. The Potters Cripples Guild was founded in 1900 by the Duchess of Sutherland from Trentham Hall. Unlike many institutions, the workshops for the Cripples Guild were for boys and girls, both taught and employed in metalwork, printing and flower making. The Duchess did not want the idea of supporting the disabled to be regarded as charity. So in 1907, she floated a limited company, the Duchess of Sutherland's Cripples Guild. Work produced by pupils was sold in a shop in New Bond Street, London. The workers and shareholders shared in the bonuses and profits of the company. There was an age limit for the society, which was 16, and there was always a waiting list. At this time, support for those who were disabled was growing and was accelerated by all the soldiers returning from the First World War who had received such life-changing injuries. Christchurch in Shropshire had been set up by a disabled nurse, Agnes Hunt. Agnes had trained at a hospital in Rhyl, North Wales, where a pioneering surgeon, Sir Robert Jones, was the leading teacher and surgeon. Sir Robert practiced the techniques instituted by his uncle, Hugh Owen Thomas, and was the leading surgeon for aiding returning soldiers who needed orthopaedic attention. All these people had a connection to Hartshill. Longfield Cottage, situated in Hartshill, had been built about 1800. The owner, Mrs. Craik, sold the cottage in 1831 to Herbert Minton, pottery manufacturer. who expanded it by the purchase of nearby Longfield House. This estate was in turn sold to the Cripples Aid Society in 1918. Beside the house, there were extensive grounds with lawns and vegetable and flower gardens, exactly as advocated by the supporters of the open-air cure. It overlooked the valley and was beautifully shaded by a screen of trees. Hartshill was opened on the 7th of June 1918. There were fundraising activities, including an annual garden party. Financial provisions were in place from May 1920, when the Ministry of Health gave subsidy of £180 per bed. There were a variety of types of bed for the different conditions. The treatment in the 19th century of all types of disability was regarded as a financial drain on society. Those who were mentally ill slowly began to be segregated from those with other disabilities, who often stayed in the community, or some even begged on the streets still. The 1918 Education Act required education for disabled children, everyone having a right to education. Some of the schools already established were harsh, but new approaches were being found with sunshine homes which looked after the blind, and open-air schools were believed to improve children's health. The Hartshill Cripples Hospital followed this latter principle. Various studies from mid-19th century had shown that the diseases were more severe and less likely to be cured in the poor, as travel to obtain recommended treatment was necessary, this being beyond the reach of poor, and symptoms were frequently not detected early enough. The treatment using outdoor theories was recognised in England, although there was a natural antagonism to things outdoors due to the British climate and the reluctance to cause drafts by opening windows and doors. Fresh air was the first component of the treatment, by day being outdoors and by night with wide open windows. Initial bed rest was followed by gradually introducing exercise. The children in the hospital in Hartshill studied in outdoor classrooms, wrapped in blankets when the weather was cold. Much of the education was craft-based, highly recommended for both physical dexterity and mental stability. Diet was improved. Afternoon naps were taken outside. Sir Robert regularly treated the children at Hartshill, and the children were well cared for. Prior to the First World War, equipment needed by the disabled was very expensive, but Sir Robert's designs reduced costs. The lives of patients in 1921 show that without this organisation, they would have been suffering and isolated, several not coming from wealthy families and unable to afford such treatment and equipment. There were many fundraising events. However, whilst researching patients, I came across Hilda Farmer in June 1926. By then, Hilda had been a patient at Longfields for at least 4 years. She had put her name to a letter of thanks to the numerous ladies and gentlemen who had taken the patients to Alton Towers. Alton Towers today is widely known as a theme park with stomach-churning rides and attractions. In the 1920s, however, it was still open to the public, but was a serene beauty spot, favoured for its beautiful grounds, lake and architecture. Nearly 200 children, all with disabilities, accompanied by several members of staff, were taken on the outing on the 26th of June 1926. They were conveyed on their journey by 100 private cars. They may have been taken to their appointments in luxury cars, but the general strike, but they had never been taken out for a country jaunt in one. Local businesses also contributed as the cars were decorated with flags and colourful bunting, as were the coloured fancy hats worn by all the children. The Sentinel declared that the North Staffordshire had probably never before known such a remarkable procession as that formed by the cars which conveyed the children to Alton. The cars were headed by a number of outriders on motorcycles who were members of the North Staffordshire Motor Club. Police motorcyclists marshalled the route, and at the rear of the convoy, a motorcyclist gave warning to other road users with a notice, "Please do not pass 100 cars in front." The whole route was lined by cheery well-wishers, and a cinematographer took a film of the procession. The sun had been shining from before the children set off, and was still shining brilliantly as they arrived at the Towers, which was the seat of the Earls of Shrewsbury and Talbot. The mansion had the outline described by the Sentinel as a feudal castle. The children alighted onto the lawn, and activities of boating on the lake, games and exploration of the grounds were followed by a picnic tea in the Towers. A gentleman with a bowler hat, which was too small, acted as an Aunt Sally, and children won coppers should they dislodge his hat. The whole was accompanied by music provided by the National Reserve Prize Band, who played selections of popular programmes. All too soon, it was time for the tired children to return to Longfield. They had no difficulty in finding their own car, as each car had been allocated and displayed a number, which had also been written on a card and given to each child. All arrived safely back, having enjoyed a very special day. The hospital did go on to have new extensions, and in 1931, a set of wonderful railings was commissioned from Gordon Mitchell Forsyth of the Burslem School of Art. There are 11 bays set between brick pillars, which are each topped by a fluted cap. Central medallions show children in various activities. Monograms commemorate Viscountess Rosemary Ednam, daughter of the Duke of Sutherland, who had worked tirelessly to raise money for the hospital. The railings were spared from being confiscated to aid the war effort during the Second World War because of their architectural and artistic significance. Sadly, these are the only memory of the Cripples Hospital and have been granted Grade 2 listed status as the buildings were demolished in 1977. Thank you for listening, and hope that it's given a glimpse of life of the disabled in the early 20th century. Don't forget to browse the list of fascinating talks available with all about that place, and check out the Few Forgotten Women website.